I've simulated 500 years in the future on Football Manager 2024, and it's fair to say the future gets weird. And weird thing number one is that the English Premier League is now only the 31st most reputable club competition in Europe. And as you can see, that has had a significant impact on European qualification spot. Regardless of the fact Stockport have won the league, we'll get to that. But just that's Europa League, isn't it? UECL. So just the one Champions League qualification spot. Where does it tell us? Where are the rules? Let's have a look at the rules to see who qualifies for what. So yeah, first place in the Premier League gets Champions League. Champions League Champions Path first qualifying round. Second place gets a Conference League first qualifying round, as does third place and fourth place / FA Cup winner. I guess it's I suspect when we get to the Champions League winners, there's not going to be many from England anymore because there's not many teams from England playing in it. What is also notable is the lack of money in the English Premier League now. That's one of the things about FM24 that people are quite excited about, dynamic sponsorship income. And as you can see, sponsorship income in the Premier League is way down. Prize money in the Premier League is way down. Obviously, with the Champions League not there, Champions League money is way down. So not only is the Premier League in decline, it's going to be hard to come back as well because they're not going to be able to compete on the same financial footing as Belgium and Scotland. We don't have the Belgian league loaded, so we can't see what the money is like there. We do, however, have Scotland loaded. So what we can do is have a look at the sponsorship income there. What a difference. Stockport were the highest sponsored team in the English Premier League on about £20 million of sponsorship income. Edinburgh City in Scotland, £214 million of sponsorship money. And if we look at their rules to see who gets what into Europe, how do we see that the Scottish League is still so confusing? Here we go. So the top four in Scotland all go straight into the Champions League group stage. And then fifth goes into the Europa League group stage. Sixth is the Conference League group stage. And actually seventh place gets into the Conference League playoff. Bearing in mind, seventh place in the SPL is the bottom half of the split. So actually, once they have the top half, bottom half split towards the end of the season, there is a European spot up for grabs for the team that finishes top of the worst teams in the SPL. I warned you, the future gets weird. If you enjoy this kind of content, please make sure you leave a nice big thumbs up on the video to let me know you want to see more of this kind of stuff. I am trying to holiday forward to 1,000 years in the future. Subscribe to the channel as well. Turn your notifications on so you don't miss out on those videos when they come. And of course, if you haven't yet got FM24 and this is your first exposure to it through this video, if you want to pre-order, you can do that using my discount code at the top of the description below. Gets you the game cheaper than it would be on Steam and Epic while supporting the channel. It's very much appreciated. Those of you who have used that. The full game releases on the 6th of November. This is all being done on the early access. That might explain why it's so bonkers. So getting back to the English Premier Division, we will work our way back around to Scotland again in a moment. But in England, I mean, that Premier League 500 years in the future looks like no Premier League I have ever seen before. Stockport as champions, very few current Premier League teams actually in the Premier League. Luton, unbelievably, are one of the few that have remained. They've pretty much been a fixture for the full 500 years of this save in the Premier League. Who knew when they got promoted in real life that they were basically committing to being a Premier League team for most of the next 500 or so years? I mean, I'm pretty sure none of us expected that. Newcastle are still there as well, who I think when we did 250 years in the future, Newcastle were dominant and had the record for most Premier League victories. They've now won the they probably still have the record. They've won the Premier League 243 times, 57 times Champions League winners. Although, as we saw from the league table there, in recent years, it's not been so hot for Newcastle. They've been they've been Newcastle again for the last 100 years. They've spent a lot of time down in the Championship. It's weird. They were so good for so long, and now they've just fallen off over the course of the last 100 years or so. Has someone else broken their record for most times winners? No, it is still them with 243. But there must be other clubs getting close now, you would think. If we have a look through the past winners, it's all current non-league teams. It's like when people do that experiment database where they flip the league structure on its head and put all the non-league teams in the Premier League and all the Premier League teams in non-league. Apparently, you don't have to use the editor, just holiday forward far enough, and it happens all by itself. Kings Lynn, as a former non-league to legend starter team, have won it. They're Beaconsfield. Goodness me. With the win there's some names on here. A few people have asked if I'm going to release the file so you can have a root through these yourself. My plan is to release the file once we've done the 1,000 years in the future video. So at the pace it's going, we're about 600 years forward on the simming now. So hopefully within a week or so we'll have 1,000 years in the future done, and at that point I will release the save file as well. So yeah, it looks like Newcastle got to the mid 2400s. And then just stopped and collapsed Luton with a couple of Premier League wins in there as well. But up until that point in the save, it was very much all Newcastle for literally a couple of 100 years. And then it just stopped almost as abruptly as it started. If we jump down through the rest of the divisions as well to see what's what down here, looking for anything weird, looking for teams I don't recognise. Manchester City down there in mid-table. There's Beaconsfield, who, of course, we saw won the Premier League several times, have now been relegated most recently down to League Two. Kings Lynn as well, former Premier League winners. I guess because we're now in a world where there's not as much money in England, it is possible to get promoted and be competitive, win the league, get relegated a couple of times, because it's not all about money anymore. I imagine for the purists watching football in England, this is a wonderful time to watch football, even though they're not very competitive on a European stage. We assume they're not getting many people in the European competitions. We'll have a look at the Champions League winners in a moment as well to see if they are actually winning that. Peterborough, my Peterborough team in there as well. Obviously, when we did 250 years in the future, it was notable that Spurs and Chelsea were down in non-league and really struggling. I think Everton were as well. We're just looking to see what the biggest fallers are. Let me know down in the comment section. There's bound to be teams that I've missed that have fallen out of the league structure completely. Chelsea finishing rock bottom of the Football League there in 500 years' time. And in order to keep keep things moving, I've actually turned off the simming for the National League and below because it was causing it to crash. That was one of the reasons we had a few problems. So there's some teams who've now fallen down into non-league who might just be there forever, because if they've gone down to the National League North and South, if Football Manager works the way it always has, they can't get back into League Two. It's only teams that are in the National League can move in and out of League Two. So Liverpool, for example, okay, Liverpool are in League One, but Tottenham are also in League One. Is there anyone? Have we seen Arsenal anywhere? Arsenal are in the National League. So they might make it back, but they have been stuck down there. Oh, that's interesting. So maybe that works differently to how it used to work. Because I'm pretty sure in the past, once you dropped to the National League South, you couldn't make it back into the Football League if they weren't loaded. But maybe you can. Maybe I don't pretend to know how it all works. It's just fun looking at it. So we'll do a quick whistle-stop tour of the other European leagues, starting in France, which is the 18th biggest team. Let's look at their sponsorship. Hang on. Let's try that again. Let's look at their sponsorship income. A little bit more than the Premier League, an awful lot less than Scotland, and they have that in the way of European qualification spots. So certainly a bigger league than the Premier League in the future. And I was going to say no sign of Paris Saint-Germain. There they are. There they are. And if we look at records, Paris Saint-Germain still hold the record, 87 times winners. And I'm not going to flick through 500 years of this for every league. That's something you'll have to rummage through yourself. When I release the save file, we are going to try and we're looking for interesting stuff, but, you know, within reason. Bundesliga was a league that was broken when we did 250 years in the future. I have fixed it. As you can see, we now have players in teams. Bayern Munich there with a full squad. We have actual goal scorers, actual points totals, and unfortunately part of fixing it means we have the Bayern Munich back at the top, because that's what Bayern Munich do. 15th biggest league. Let's check their sponsorship income. Wowzers. Bayern Munich, just like in real life, I guess, way more money than everybody else in this league. And I mean, less than you would expect in the way of European qualification spots. Record winner, yeah, it's still Bayern Munich, 80 times winners. It's interesting how the Premier League skewed so much towards Newcastle, whereas a lot of the other leagues have shared the titles around. Because if we're 500 years in the future, that means most of these leagues have 600 years plus of history. For the team that's won it most to have only won it 70 or 80 times really shows how much those league titles are being shared around. Whereas in England, I mean, it's become a farmers' league. Newcastle have won nearly half of them in history, which is, it's sad, really. So we need the Spanish First Division. I still haven't got the real name fix on for leagues, which is something I will get sorted soon. Valencia, absolutely dominating in Spain. And in fact, of all the big five leagues at the moment, Spain is the one that have maintained their big five position. So presumably there's still a lot of money sloshing around in Spain. Again, not as much as in Scotland, but they do have 2 Champions League qualification spots, 5 European spots in total. So even that, for the team 4th most reputable, that's not a lot of qualification spots, but it's the league that looks like it's changed the least as well. For the top 5 to include Valencia, Barcelona and Real Madrid, it's not changed massively, has it? Most times when it is Barcelona, 212, so similar to the Premier League, skewed very much towards the bigger teams, and you can see that reflected in the league table as well, so a lot of the bigger teams are still there. And then if we go and check Italy, when we did 250 years, the Italian league was the one that had fallen off massively, similar to the point the Premier League is now. So I was going to say it would be interesting to see if they've recovered. They kind of haven't. They're still down there, marginally worse than the Premier League. Genoa are, they've been winning it for a long time now. My goodness me. And there is, someone said on the 250 years in the future one, Juventus were nowhere to be seen. Juventus are still nowhere to be seen. Let's just check what's happened to Juventus. Juventus are, wow. Juventus are just done. They're nothing. They're a tiny little team playing in the regional leagues. Still sponsored by Jeep. So does that mean Jeep has had a fall from grace as well? If we look at the most times winners, it's AC Milan on 174. And check the sponsorship income here as well. It's low. It's low like the Premier League. I mean, for there to be teams in this league who only get £275,000 of sponsorship money, how on earth are they supposed to compete with the might of the Scottish teams like Edinburgh City, who are just absolutely dominant? If we look at the sponsorship income again, Edinburgh City, so much money. Scotland is just, they're having a lovely time up there. Arbroath are the most time winners with 129. And if we look through the past winners, the most obvious thing to me is there's no sign of Rangers or Celtic. There's Celtic with a few wins there. But it's very much Arbroath, Edinburgh City. And I suspect that's also going to be the case when we look at the Champions League. So Champions League currently held by Porto, 3 wins in a row from Porto. The Portuguese league, unfortunately, is a league I don't have loaded. So all we can do is look at past winners in Portugal. It's very much Porto and Benfica. Benfica winning the league more often than Porto, but Porto, as you can see, currently dominating the Champions League. But Edinburgh City are in there a good few times as well. Galatasaray have got a few wins in there. I can't remember. I mean, when's the last time an English team actually won the Champions League? That's probably worth looking for because of that collapse of the Premier League. There's at least 5 or 6 different Scottish teams that have won it more recently than an English team, which there you go. Newcastle, the last English team to win the Champions League was nearly 100 years ago. And it's Newcastle, who, as we know, are now just a boring old mid-table team. So I don't think there's going to be an English team winning the Champions League again anytime soon. Newcastle's still the most successful team in the history of the Champions League, though 57 times winners. Also have the highest attendance, 140,000 for a game against Barcelona in 22-77. What kind of ground are Newcastle playing in? The Newcastle Stadium, 140,000 all-seater, built in 24-94. So they had a massive one previous to this that they played that Barcelona game in, and in fact as well they're about to move into the 140,000 capacity Kevin Keegan Stadium in 25-26. The idea of moving into the Kevin Keegan Stadium in more than 500 years time is baffling. Are you telling me Newcastle fans will know who Kevin Keegan is in 500 years? Find it hard to believe. And what does Alan Shearer, top of the legends, have to do to get a stadium named after him? The poor guy. You'd think they'd name it after somebody who was a bit more recent than Kevin Keegan, though. But that is great. And in fact, on that note, people keep asking me about the Robin van Persie Stadium or the Robin van Persie Arena, which is in Amsterdam. He isn't from Amsterdam, never played in Amsterdam. It was built in 2026, presumably for the Euros or the World Cup or something along those lines, I would guess, because no team play there, but the ground still exists. This is actually hosted, I think, was it the recent Champions League final? Was it the Robin van Persie Arena? Or it might have been the Euros. Yeah, the most recent Champions League final was at the Robin van Persie Arena, but no team plays there. So it's just a big stadium in Amsterdam, named after a guy with no Amsterdam affiliation other than the fact that he's Dutch, and they play big matches in it quite regularly. Let's look at the Europa League. So Europa League most recently won by Stratford Bus Station, which is nice to see. If we look at record holders, Ajax most times winners with 14. Do we get any English teams winning this? I don't think England even enter into this when we were looking at the European qualification spots before, although you can see Birmingham, Newcastle have got wins on there. But yeah, it's been a long period of European drought for those poor old English clubs. What will they do? Best league in the world, my eye. Let's check the Conference League. Most recently won by Bayern Munich. Club Bruges winning it. I love Bruges. What a city Bruges is. Good to see them winning that. Paris Saint-Germain getting themselves a European trophy as well. They'd love themselves a Conference League. I saw Man United in there, actually. Where was that? I just, out the corner of my eye, a rogue Manchester United winning from the Championship. I mean, I guess they're not in the Championship, or they weren't in the Championship then. They have been for a little while, though, but they have won that Conference League to go with. I mean, it's an impressive trophy cabinet. Less impressive when you realise that's 600 years worth of history, though. If we look at the record for not for Manchester United, for the Conference League's most time winner, it is FC Midtjylland. And it looks like Paris Saint-Germain also have one of these enormous 140,000 seat stadiums. I wonder if that is the biggest stadium size that you get in FM24. I don't know why I'm going to the Premier League. It's a small league, but I think they probably still have big stadiums. So stadiums, Newcastle have got a big one. Nobody else has. St Mary's still quite small. It's interesting to see how many of them are still the original stadiums as well. So Newcastle keep getting new grounds regularly, whereas Cambridge, who it's disgusting that they're in the Premier League, still playing at the Shabby, which is interesting. Let's just check the Scottish Premiership. There you go. Let's see the stadiums here to see what kind of crazy grounds this lot are playing in. Not so crazy. Edinburgh City, with all the success that they've had, are still playing in a 7,000 capacity stadium. Football Manager is bonkers. They are literally funded by all their sponsorship income. That being said, after all these years of success, they're finally moving. I mean, that's a jump. They're moving into the 111,647 capacity Jordan Dyche Stadium in 2027. So they've clearly decided, after however many titles they've won, 21 Champions Leagues, 117 SPLs, now is the time to move into a stadium 12 times bigger than the one they've had all their success in. Watch them now crumble. When we do 1,000 years in the future, they'll be in League Two. I can almost guarantee it. And then if we have a look at the World Cup as well, flicking through the past winners, it looks like China dominates the future of football. That's a lot of World Cup wins for China there. Ecuador winning, is that 4 in a row? 4 in a row for Ecuador, 2 in a row for Belarus. It very much seems like nations get their golden generations and then actually capitalise on them. It's interesting to see England making it to 3rd place despite having a pathetic domestic league. And in fact, that's demonstrated by the fact that none of the top English players actually play for English clubs. This guy is playing for Lincoln of Gibraltar because I guess Gibraltar Football League is maybe a bigger league than the Premier League in the future. Steve Cook, though, he came through the youth team at East Fife, immediately went to Gibraltar for 51 million, has never played for an English club. Joe Brown came through at TNS, spent a lot of time in Wales, then Scotland, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, has never played for an English club. Zane Offord, never played for an English club. English club football is on its backside. Goodness me. Most times World Cup winners, Portugal with 17, and Brazil still holding that. That world record's never been broken because presumably we don't do stadiums that big anymore. I think 140,000 is probably the max because we've seen it in a few different examples of it. We thought Belarus dominated the World Cup for a while. Belarus, my word. Belarus they are the #1 ranked team in world football. Belarus. I mean, fair enough. It's 500 years in the future. Who am I to say that's not going to happen? Most time World Cup winners is Belarus with 23 as well. So it's not just that they've had a golden generation and capitalised on it. They've won 23 European championships. Belarus is one of the greatest footballing nations in the history of the world when we go 500 years in the future. That is madness. And it's obviously not the only madness that's going to be in here. I will have missed a lot. There's only so much you can do on a video when there's so much data to search through. So like I say, if you're enjoying this, make sure you leave a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments if there's any specific stuff you want me to look into. The sponsorship stadium stuff we've done in this video is off the back of people asking for it in the 250 years in the future. So if there's stuff you want me to dive into on 1,000 years in the future, let me know. And then once the 1,000 years in the future one is out, I will release the save file so you can have a nose around in it for yourselves as well. But if you've enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up on it for me. Subscribe to the channel for daily Football Manager videos, Let's Plays, experiments, tutorials. We've got it all here. I also stream on Twitch most evenings as well. Links to everything is down in the description below. And thank you very much for watching.